You're all set here.
Hi, everyone. Today's presentation is called Time to Talk the Talk of Accessibility. I'm Carrie Mocyk. I'm one of the instructional designers on campus. I just want to give a little disclosure. We're going to brush the surface of all of terms related to accessibility. There's plenty of other trainings where you can learn how to address accessibility. Um, One of the things that you'll learn quickly is that you don't need to know everything about accessibility, but you do need to know that it's important and that it needs to be addressed. So let's get started. This is all just definitions related to accessibility, not much on how to, just the definitions. All right, so we'll start with an accommodation. Accommodations are usually set up through accessibility resources. An example is extended time on an exam or note-taking assistance. They're personalized accommodations, meaning they're meant for that particular person. Accommodations will probably always exist, but the concern with accommodation is it's more of a reactive approach to the student needs instead of a proactive approach. And that's where accessibility comes in to play. So accessibility has multiple meanings. This can lead to confusion. The two meanings that we're going to focus on are physical accessibility, which is related to like automatic doors, elevators, ramps, things like that, or digital accessibility, which has to do with like an audiobook or touchscreen or screen reader. Everyone benefits from digital accessibility because it improves the user experience for all. Um, Consider these examples, like watching closed captions on a video while you're on a train, or listening to an audiobook because your eyes are strained after a long day of work. SUNY Oswego has taken a vested interest for several years now, improving the digital accessibility of our campus, and that's why we're here today. I wanted to share this information because many think of accessibility as it relates to how to gain access into something. Ultimately, that's not wrong, but as it relates to today's presentation, we're talking about digital accessibility. It's all about designing with accessibility in mind, a proactive approach to removing barriers for others. So when we talk about assistive technologies, we are talking about tools or devices, software designed to help individuals with disabilities interact with digital and physical environments more effectively independently. There's a few examples. We have screen readers that convert text and other on-screen elements into speech or braille. That could be JAWS or NVDA, which is non-visual desktop access or voiceover. There are screen magnifiers, which are tools that enlarge on screen text and images. A couple of those are Zoom Text, Windows Magnifier. And then there's also speech recognition software, which allows users to control devices or input text using their voice. So Dragon Naturally Speaking or built-in tools like Windows Speech Recognition. There's a couple different ones available. So I'm telling you this because just having a basic understanding of what assistive technologies exist will assist you in understanding why addressing digital accessibility is so important. Okay, so this is getting into the weeds a little bit, but this Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, you're going to hear this definition, this term, um, through different conversations because these are the guidelines that we're going to be working towards to make our materials more accessible. They offer rules and recommendations designed to make websites more digitally accessible. Their goal is to ensure everyone, regardless of abilities, can act or interact with digital content. They focus on things like making text readable and ensuring websites can navigate through only using a keyboard. There are different versions of WCAG because the technology and accessibility have evolved. At this point, 2.0 and 2.1 is the minimum standard. 2.2 is more inclusive. However, 3.0 is on the horizon and is really what we should be striving towards. As technology advances, the WCAG standards will evolve too. So that's what the difference is. So 3.0 is recognizing how much we're using our devices, our phones, those type of environments more. So they've got more standards to address those things. So we've got the minimum of 2.1, 2.2 is the active one, and 3 is coming. And then within that, they have these 3 different levels, and it's A, double A, or triple A. An example of that, the minimum being A, it could be like captions provided for pre-recorded content. So that could be what they'd call a WCAG 2.1 level A. If you wanted to go more advanced, a double A could be captions provided for all live meetings. So that's another step up. And then AAA could be something like using sign language interpreters that's provided for audio content. So like those are the different levels, and you can see they're more advanced. And so like, why am I telling you this? They're going to talk about WCAG standards on campus. There's going to be conversations about it. You don't need to know everything about it. You just need to know this is what they're talking about. It's about the different standards that go along with it. The next information I wanted to share was about DQ University. It is available for all faculty and staff. It's a website that serves as a great resource for training and for determining how to address different digital accessibility concerns. It offers training and on-demand reference materials for every level and every area of expertise. It's good to know that SUNY has a contract with DQ. And if you go to the SUNY CPD DQ website, you'll be able to get started in gaining access to that. And I can share that at the end. So the Americans with Disability Act, ADA.gov, federal civil rights law prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities in everyday activities. It goes into more details about there's a lot that goes into ADA, but that is the general gist of what's being explained. Prohibits discrimination. I wanted to tell you this because recently there's been a decision to call out a specific area of inclusivity that directly impacts our campus. And that is Title II. So Title II says it requires state and local government offices to ensure, not just government, all of our colleges too, to ensure that their services, programs, activities meet web accessibility standards and are accessible to people with disabilities. It's important to note that the deadline for this is April of 2026. And what this means is that all of us are impacted by this Title II regulation, faculty, staff, and students too. It involves everything from websites to social media posts to hockey tickets and content created by others that you use. So it's not just stuff that you created, it's also the stuff that you're sharing out with others. So this is quite a big deal, and that is why there's a lot of conversation. Before, accessibility was something that we should be addressing, but now they're actually taking a part of the ADA law and saying you must be in compliance. All right, so it goes. Sorry, I skipped that slide. Who does this impact? Public schools, community colleges, public universities, hospitals, healthcare clinics, states, local courts, libraries, and there's the April 2026 deadline. Okay, so now that you kind of have a very quick foundation, this is definitely a crash course of a lot of information related to digital accessibility. I wanted to talk about what this means as far as making your materials more accessible. So in that context, we're going to talk about what we call structured content. And it means organizing and formatting your content so that there's clear navigation, consistent layouts, accessible visual and interactives, and it's more of a responsive design, making sure that the content can be accessed on various devices like smartphones or desktops. Um, So you may or may not be able to visually see if content is structured. So first thought, if you think of structured content, you might be thinking of use of paragraphs and things like that. But this is a different type of structure that we're discussing. So this first one, we call them headings. So if you look at the image on the right, you'll see a toolbar that's inside of Google and in Google Docs, and it talks about what they say normal text, and then a title, a subtitle, a heading 1, a heading 2, and a heading 3. Using headings inside of your materials will allow the user to jump from section to section. So if you think about your syllabus or a syllabus, and they jump from, uh, the first page to the course schedule, which might be on the 10th page. If it is not formatted with headings, the student would have to listen all the way through the entire syllabus to get to that course schedule. So it allows them to jump. Now, the way that this works is major sections would be considered a heading 1. If you were to indent, like if you're thinking in an outline format, heading 2, those are subsections. And then heading 3, usually don't go past heading 3. But that is, so it kind of goes like all of the major topics would be heading 1s, details about that are still important, but less important. And then it just continues till you get to like paragraph where it's sharing the information, the paragraph content. Okay. So then we get to lists. Lists improve readability of large blocks of text. How many of us have ever been looking at a paragraph that is just too long? It's just too long, and you're lost in the information. Lists can help make it more manageable to read. There's bulleted lists. They're used for unordered items. And then there's numbered lists that are used when sequencing matters. So if you are creating lists inside of your course or anywhere, any content that you're creating, you're going to want to use the in the toolbar, the list options. So don't just press one, dot space. You're going to want to use the options, and this will read it properly for the user using a screen reader or something like that. So if we just use the dash symbol when making a list, this screen reader is simply going to read dash, and it will not alert the reader that there's a list. And I have to tell you that in recent years, I've been using lists a lot more, especially when it's content that I'm trying to get others to understand. Like I need to make sure that they caught all of the important pieces of that paragraph. I've been turning them into lists to improve readability. Contextual hyperlinks. It's a link to a website used commonly. The words should be words or phrases that appropriately reflect what the person is being directed towards. So if you look at the example, you'll see the first one, https www.oswego.edu. This is really important to know that a screen reader could potentially read HTTP and that entire hyperlink to the student. Versus the bottom one, it would say that this is a link that takes you to the student handbook. So that's a contextual hyperlink. We want to avoid things like click here or learn more because it doesn't provide enough context for the user to know what the link is going to take them to. All right, moving on to alt text or image descriptions. Alt text or text equivalence is used to describe the message being conveyed in an image. If a person is blind or using is using a screen reader, the person will rely on what we call alt text or text equivalence to share image information about the image. Alt text should be available for all images. And if the image is really complex and difficult to explain in a few words, then the content of the image should be communicated in a text format. So for example, let's say you're explaining a chart. You want students to see a chart of information. If it is complicated to share in an alt text, just make sure within your content area, written right below the paragraph, above the paragraph, the image shared below explains this chart, and this is the takeaway information I want you to understand after reading this chart or viewing this chart, hearing about this chart. So this is important for photos, charts, graphics, comics, animations, things like that. So to find this is using a Google Doc. I right click and there's the alt text, and you can add a description in there. Color contrast is all about making sure that the text and important elements on a screen stand out clearly from the information that's on the screen. Among others, this is important for those who are colorblind or visually impaired. A good way to check color contrast is to turn the items in question into grayscale. If you can't tell the difference in grayscale, the contrast is not high enough. There's different color contrast testers where you can determine if there's enough color contrast between the two. You'll need what we call a hex code. And if you look at the screenshot here, I've got a hex code. This explains, this is a color identifier is what a hex code is. And you can check 2 different hex codes to see if there's enough contrast. I'll let you know that inside Brightspace, they do a great job. If you use different colors, you can actually see whether the contrast is good for small print, large print, or if there isn't enough contrast, they'll actually give you a warning if you're looking at the colors in Brightspace. So this particular page is off of Google Doc, but just know that this is commonly found in different tools that we use on our campus. Looking at tables, they're tabular data. Tables must be formatted and determine if the table really should be used. That's important to recognize. If a table is not formatted to allow screen readers to read the table in an organized manner, it is going to decide, I can't remember which way it goes. It's either going to read across or read up and down. So if it is important that the students are reading the information across, then it needs to be set to identify the headers, and then also which way the information should be shared with them. If you can imagine the user experience, if there's 10 different rows in a table and 5 different columns, how it reads is actually quite important for the user experience. Avoid the temptation to use a table as a convenient way to lay out or organize other types of information, because a lot of times this information could be in a paragraph format and is probably more user-friendly for individuals relying on screen readers or different assistive technology devices. So just keep that in mind. All right, so in videos, closed captions, live captions, and transcripts, they should be used. In Brightspace, I'm sorry, in Panopto. Panopto is the tool that we recommend for video storage, at least for video storage. You can create in Panopto, but many people may not know that you can also store your videos in Panopto. And Panopto allows you to, it creates the captions similar to like what YouTube does, but you also have the option to edit those captions so that they are accurate. You want to review these captions for errors. And the other big thing about videos, that this is something I recently learned that's worth acknowledging. When creating video, it's really important to work to avoid lost messages. So I mention this because if you have an image that's inside a video, and it kind of goes back to charts and things like that. If you do not explain what those images are, and somebody is listening to the video without watching the video, there's a lot of lost messages. So it's something to consider as you're creating different materials for others to view, is that you're explaining what is on your screen along with um, offering these closed captions, so live captions as transcripts. So this takes a little bit of practice, and we're going to continue to talk about this more in future months as we work towards meeting Title II. So an example of that, if the video says, "I'm so excited you are here," and in the video is it someone at Murano Campus Center, changing your script to say, "I am so excited you are here at Murano Campus Center at SUNY Oswego." Whether the user sees it or hears it, the message is the same. All right, so that's where I'm talking about avoiding lost messages. When we talk about fonts, we're talking about its crucial role in readability. You want to choose fonts carefully, avoid script that looks, or a script looks or letters too close together. Fonts shouldn't convey personalities, because then we're making an assumption that everybody knows that bubbly fonts mean bubbly people, things like that. If you want to, you can relay that information in a different format. If you have too much of a script look, the letters are together, making it difficult for someone who is using magnifying software to read the font. And also taking note of the size of the font used for presentations, and also in regular documents. In presentations, we say 24 point or higher. Okay, the next one is about plain language. It's a form of communication that is written so that anyone can understand it the first time, and that it's said, read, or heard. It helps people with cognitive disabilities, individuals whose primary language is not English, and others. So general communication, like emails, instructions on a test, or a summary of content on a website, should be written at a middle school reading level. Use clear, concise, and efficient language. Be literal and be precise. Now, it should be everyone should understand that if the content is for your discipline, that should be written at a higher level. These are just more of basic explanation of things, and just trying to reduce those barriers for others. So if you look at the example here, it says, in the event that you experience any technical difficulties while attempting to access the online portal, it's advisable to consult the user manual or reach out to the support team via the contact information provided therein. Or you can say, hey, if you have trouble, check the user manual, contact support. All right, that's the difference. There are multiple accessibility checkers. Microsoft and Google each have their own. Ally is in Brightspace. You can look for those sundials inside of Brightspace. You can click on those sundials in Brightspace, and it'll tell you what is potentially wrong with the course or with that area. It's a guide. Do not solely rely on the checkers. There are ways to bypass them to make it look like there's good information, or that it is considered accessible. As you're working with the checkers and learning more about accessibility, you'll see how that can work. But it is nice as a starting point to see what is considered accessible and not. And this next part, we're going to talk about PowerPoints and Google Slides. This is something that I know is commonly used on campus and is something that really it's something that we need to think about with Title II compliance and also being more inclusive to everyone. So we'll start with slide titles. And presentations are important so that a person using a screen reader can jump from slide to slide while knowing what the titles mean. So page 1 of 1, page 2 of 2 is not really helpful, but explaining what is on these pages in a descriptive title will reduce barriers for others. Establishing reading order is crucial because the order in which the items are added to your slide is how it could read to the user. So let's see, let me see if I put that in there. Yep, okay. And I'll talk about more of that in a second, but avoid animations, automatic transitions, and then use the accessibility checkers. You'll find that, you know, it can come across fun to use some of these different features, but we do question why, what are the benefits of using it? All right. Let's see. Okay, so reading order, what I wanted to talk about here is we have a learning objective 3, a magnifying glass, and record transactions and a journal and post-journal entries to the ledger. Okay, so those are 3 different things. The reading order is how the screen reader is going to read it to the student. So if you put in this record transactions in a journal first, and then put the magnifying glass, then put this in, that is how it could read. So you want to make sure that the reading order is set for the student when they're working through your slides. And this is kind of how it looks. You can just drag and move them around to how you want. So we have the learning objective. So this has the picture at the very end, but it's setting the reading order is actually quite easy. It's not too difficult, but it definitely would change the user experience for sure. So going into like what's next, I just gave you a whole bunch of information related to accessibility. It's going to be just choosing one of those things that's in there. What do you think would have the biggest impact? And start small. And you can explore a few of the topics presented today. And just start working towards something related to accessibility. It's important for you to know your resources. We do have the SUNY Oswego accessibility website. And that's a website that was put together by the Work Group on Accessibility Practices, and there are how-to guides in there. It is a great place to get started with things. There's also a link to DQ there. We also have the Access, a Quest Towards Inclusion course, and that is a course that's available for anyone. And it is something that was designed so that it's not just a faculty lens, it's not just a staff lens, it's everybody, anyone can benefit from taking that course. It's not too complex to understand, but it does provide a lot of different perspectives on the importance of digital accessibility. We do have accessibility campus groups. There's the Digital Accessibility Steering Committee, the Work Group on Accessibility Practices. We have web steering committees, and then there's also accessibility fellows. Okay, so that is the end of the presentation. Um, at this time, I didn't know if there's anyone that wanted to go over anything related to any of the definitions. I'd be happy to clarify anything that I shared with you. Any questions? This is a great time just to, you may be hearing information about this Title II, and I just wanted to give you the opportunity to ask anything. Okay, let's see. Oh, good. Yeah, it's kind of this the thing about accessibility is everyone's going to kind of handle this differently. It's whether you want to get started with the first day of how to, or whether you benefit just from getting the general overview of what it looks like and why we're talking about it. And that's kind of what this is. It at least gives you a foundation piece of why. I guess that's what it does. It provides the why. And there's different sessions. I know there's some things on Friday, I believe, on creating accessible content. Is there anything anyone would like me to go back to review?
I have a question, Carrie. Um, as as we're all at our like different levels with this, if somebody was kind of like new to inputting accessibility features, um, how much longer do you think they would need to plan for in their workflow, to be creating materials like now versus to make them accessible versus just quickly putting something together?
I have to tell you that once you start um, using accessible practices, it just becomes part of the norm. It's not, of course, the videos take a little bit longer for sure. If you have longer videos, reviewing those for accuracy definitely can take some time. But anything Word document, PowerPoint, all of those, it doesn't take a lot to just build it into your day. You'll
Mhm.
find that starting simple, you'll notice that the slides are very simple. Um, that is the best way. You can't go wrong with it being simple.
Mm.
You can definitely go wrong adding too many animations or just different barriers. If I did my best as I was in here explaining everything that was on the slides so that if somebody wasn't watching, they could still hear what I was saying. Like those are things that takes a little bit of practice, but it didn't take a tremendous amount to adjust, the way that I present.
Mm-hmm.
So that part's fine. I think the video is probably the longest, the
Right.
biggest one.
That
And
makes sense.
PDFs. PDFs would be another one.
I know you guys have had like support things in the past, like Zoom drop-in hours and stuff. Are you planning any sort of like work sessions where people could come and just work on their slide presentations, for example, and just get support if needed?
I do believe that is going to be something that we're offering. We're still in a, in the next couple of weeks. I do expect some updates as far as info drop-in hours, something like that. I do think that's really helpful, kind of like what we did with Brightspace. Just the ability to ask questions. So some Zoom office hours would be, yes, I do believe that's going to be the direction that we're going with that. And you're going to see a lot on a lot of different opportunities very soon. So,
Thank you.
yeah, for sure. And if there is any time that you do have any questions, like there's a circumstance that you're trying to work through, there is the work group on accessibility practices does have an email address. You are welcome to email that to ask the question. And that's one thing that's been really nice about the work group. It's we all know different aspects of it, and we kind of go back and forth. Um, and that group, continues to grow larger as we're just addressing some of these different things. All right, well, what do you think? Would this be the best way to go about it? I think that's one of the things with accessibility. It's like you don't know what you don't know, and it's good. It's one of those things that at least recognizing that you don't know what you don't know before you go present something to 100 people that may or may not be considered accessible. When I have something that's that is for a very large audience, and I'm nervous about it. I was just working on a course recently that's gonna go. It's a new orientation. Absolutely had one of our experts look at it and make sure that I caught everything. And there were some recommendations. So it's helpful to kind of get a little network together of people in a similar boat. Some of the fellows can be of assistance to ask those questions back and forth. But you'll notice that I personally stay with simple because that's least likely to cause major issues. Anyone else have any questions?
And what's the email address for the accessibility work group?
It should be work group on accessibility practices. Let's see. Or some accessibility. Yeah, it's accessibility practices at Oswego.
Okay, thank you.
But if you go to SUNY Oswego, I'll pull the link up real quick. I've lost. There we go. All right, this is the accessibility website that we put together. And it does have some resources available. It has some written tutorials, talks about the different groups, has the challenge, the access quest toward inclusion. There's a lot of information in here and also contact information so that if you do have questions, you can ask here. All right.